Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today, our group 4 will be tell the summary of Psycholinguistics from chapter 6 of Rod Ellis book, as psycholinguistic aspects of interlanguage. Okay, we just going through the points. Okay, the first presenter will be me. I will tell you guys what is psycholinguistic is. Psycholinguistic is the study of mental structures and process that involve the acquisition of used language. So the psycholinguistics is all the process beyond our brain that consists of a process that record the language use, the acquisition of language, the part of language, the way human act to language itself. And then in psycholinguistic there are several points that we need to understand. The first, the L1 transfer. What does it mean with an L1 transfer? The L1 transfer is the way a learner or human understand the language, accept the language from outside to inside his brain. So this replicant of rule from the first language, the second language is called the language transfer. So when someone speak to you in English, the way you understand is by translated, and it's translated inside your brain, and that translate called as transfer. Your second language is referred to your first language, and then it is construct inside your brain, and then you can speak to the second language itself. So our knowledge and understanding first language impact our understanding of second language. We can transfer grammar, vocabulary, syntax, semantics, spelling, morphology, pronunciation, structure, culture, translation to the second language. This process called as language transfer, or it is also called as linguistic interference. Or I will give you another example. When we speak English, our first language will affect to our second language, which is English itself. The grammar will be affect, the culture will be affect, and then there are a lot that will affect our language, our second language. Okay, in L1 transfer, it's separated into 2 points. The first is negative transfer, and the second is positive transfer. Okay, I will explain negative first. The negative transfer is when the first language have a bad effect to your second language. For example, when you have a different meanings from your second language to second language, and you cannot translate that, you cannot transfer that, it means there is an error. So this is called a negative transfer. The example is in Spanish, they usually speak in present. There are no tenses for past tense. So when they speak English, their grammar in Spanish will be affect their second language in English, which they don't use past tense while speak English, because the culture of the language of Spanish, they don't have past tense. So it is an error. So this is called negative transfer. So, and positive transfer is the reverse of negative transfer, which means your first language can assist your second language. What does it mean with assist? Assist means it can help you. It can give you some kind of reflection. For example, when you don't know the meaning of your second language, the second language means in this context is English. So when you don't know the English, but there are similar words in your first language, so you can translate them and you can transfer them. So it assists you in understanding the meaning of language itself. So I think that's all from explanation. The rest will be explained by Arya, Rika, Nadya, and Hajar. Thank you.
The next is according to Eric Kellerman, learners that some linguistic features are potentially transferable and non-transferable. Kellerman found that advanced Dutch learner of English has clear perception about which meanings of broken, be break, or break were basic in their first language. He also found that they were prepared to translate a sentence like "He's broke zijn bin," that is, he broke his leg, directly into English using broke for broke, but were not prepared to give a direct translation of a sentence like he undergoes percent word get broken. The underground resistance was broken. And next, other researchers have found that the transfer of some first language grammatical features is tied the learners of English. And when transfer takes place, there is usually no loss of first language knowledge. This obvious fact has led to the suggestion that a better term for referring the effects of the first language might be cross-linguistic influence. That's all from me, thank you.
To talk. My name is Siti Hajar and I want to talk about the communication strategies. So in communication strategies, a learner experiences some kind of problem with an initial plan which prevents them from executing it. And they can either abandon the initial plan and develop the entirely different one by means of a reeducation strategy, or try to maintain their original communicative goal by adopting some kind of achievement strategy. And in communicative strategy, there are two types. The first type is serial processing. So this is the information that process in a series of sequential steps and results in the representations of what has been learned and some kind of rule and strategy. The next one is parallel distributed processing, and here the credit of the learner with the ability to perform a number of mental tasks at the same time. Model based on parallel distributed processing reject the whole notion of rule. So in parallel distributed processing, they are not use the rule, while the serial processing they follow the rule and strategy. So that is for me. Thank you.
So I will explain about the rule of consciousness in L2 acquisition different between acquired and learned. Jadi kalau acquired itu kita belajar L2 atau second language tanpa kita sadari atau di alam bawah sadar kita. Sedangkan learn kita belajar second language itu dengan kesadaran kita. Kita tahu aturan-aturannya, kita tahu gramatikalnya atau pronunciation-nya. And then there are two opposing position identified by Stefan Kresen. First is acquired L2 knowledge, implicit knowledge of the language, and the second is learn L2 knowledge, explicit knowledge about the language. Jadi kalau explicit learning is essential the ability to acquire unconscious knowledge atau sifat kognitif manusia, yaitu proses bawah sadar. Kalau explicit learning is learners have knowledge about the second language but they are unable to use the knowledge without conscious attention. Its mean in the acquired process is developed subconsciously, meanwhile in learning process is developed consciously.
Okay, hi. I will explain about processing operation. So, to identify the L2 acquisition in processing operation, there are two ways to identify. So, this operation is to develop the interlanguage, to deduce the operation that learners perform from a close inspection of their output, which shall examine two of them. So, jadi pertama itu ada operating principle, sistem operasi, dan yang kedua itu adalah processing constraints. And yang pertama adalah operating principle, so I will explain the operating principle itself. Operating principle itu adalah studi L1 acquisition, itu studi tentang perbedaan macam-macam bahasa dan untuk mengidentifikasi number of general strategies-nya itu which children use to extract and segment linguistic information from the language they hear. Jadi operating principle ini, si children itu diberikan sebuah pengajaran di mana untuk mencari tahu kemampuan mereka dalam berbahasa. Misalnya itu seperti listening. Jadi mereka mendengarkan macam-macam, misalnya bahasa Inggris. Jadi mereka mendengarkan bahasa Inggris itu sendiri dan mereka akan menyerapnya. Nah, di situ kita dapat tahu bagaimana mereka menyerap pelajaran tersebut. Okay. And the next is, what is the next? Processing constraint. So processing constraint, it's so to account for both why learners acquire the grammar of language in a definite order and also why some learners only develop very simple interlanguage grammar. So in the processing constraints itself, di situ si learner dicek kemampuan grammarnya. Ada yang menggunakan benar-benar grammar yang tersusun rata, tersusun rapi, dan yang mana menggunakan simple grammar. For example, like using simple tense in writing, perhaps. Okay, that's all for me.